Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have this last live stream for today. And I came across this story like around 3 o'clock. Apparently, today at the airport in Minneapolis, they found multiple bags with cash totaling up to $700 million. And these bags were all headed towards Somalia, but they got caught at the airport in Minnesota. So they didn't make it out. This is probably how they got all of that money over to Somalia, just using the airport. Well, this time around, looked like their luck ran out because that money did not leave Minnesota. So they have it under investigation. And y'all, the Somalians, that right there tells you they still got that money. Many of them probably still got the stolen money. So this government didn't get it back if they're able to put this in multiple suitcases and attempt to send it over to Somalia. Now, I had heard back when this all broke open, they had admitted a lot of that money made it through at the airport. But I guess now that it has blown up nationwide, this story about all the scamming, now they're grabbing the money and it's not going to make it over there. Boy, I hope you Somalians didn't promise to pay people because it don't look like you're going to be able to. And y'all know they're building all these apartment complexes over there in Kenya, and that's all with the stolen money. But see, that's why I don't pay them no mind when they sit around and say, oh, we were able to do this in one generation. No, you were able to do it in one generation because of scamming and stealing. Okay? Y'all say it like you did it on merit. You didn't do it on merit. And like I said, look at the statistics. The majority of Somalians don't work, they don't have jobs. So you have to ask yourself then, how are they making it? They're making it off of the scam money. Okay? They're making it off of the scam money. Don't be a fool. How the hell do the majority of you not work? That says it all right there. Many of you are, or I would say the majority of you are in on these scams. It would have to be that way. And what, 80% of Somalians are on food stamps? I mean, so really, I have to agree with Donald Trump. What are you really adding to the economy? Because if you're not working, you're not paying taxes, right? So it seems like y'all are just a bunch of takers and not contributors. But $700 million. Can you imagine all that money in multiple suitcases up at the airport? That had to look crazy. For real. $700 million. So y'all, and all they're doing is sending it to a terrorist group there. What, Al Shabaab or something? I mean, come on. You could at least fix up your homeland with all that money. Obviously, the terrorists aren't doing it because I seen another video that came out of some Somalians that got shipped back to their country, and dirt roads, no street signs, no outdoor lights. So when it goes dark there, it's completely pitch black. So y'all got billions and billions of dollars and you're still not fixing up the infrastructure. That says it all about your people. That says it all. So let's get to this, y'all. Let's get to it. Shalom to everybody in the chat. and you should see, because I have to keep announcing this because people keep asking. My Give, Send, Go is pinned in the chat. And if you don't see it there, just go to my community tab. Okay. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Okay, thank you.
So we're going to turn our attention back to the Somali fraud investigation. As we've discussed before, authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises. What does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Great to be on with you, too. What a crazy time we're seeing here, aren't we?
Absolutely insanity. And I know oversight in the House is looking into these fraud allegations, but I wonder if it's even bigger than we have uncovered thus far. The $700 million in cash going out of the airports there. I have a feeling we are still just scratching the surface.
Yeah, it looks really bad, and obviously very alarming to see that this U.S. cash has been legally going through our airports. And of course, there is a requirement of reporting if you're going to carry more than $10,000. There's a reporting requirement, but I think a really interesting part about this is if, isn't it going to be a little suspicious when you start seeing 10,000, 100,000, millions, and now, more, as John reported earlier, more money that goes through JFK, goes through the Minneapolis airport. Something's wrong there. And I think something that's very interesting that we impose on banks is that banks are required under banking law to require and file and keep track of what they call suspicious activity reports. This is something I think we need to do now when we see the large amounts of U.S. cash, and it's always U.S. cash. I mean, you're not going to see, Chinese yen or anything else going through there. And U.S. cash is king, and we need to certainly have this type of cash exchange reported. It's interesting because you see all this illegal immigration we've had over this time. And by the way, most of those Somalis that are in Minnesota probably came through a refugee program, and probably many of them are already legal American citizens. So suspicious activity reports, some kind of accounting for cash, I think would really be helpful. I'm looking at ways that we might be able to do this so that we could actually look at what's going on. Banks are required to do that. Individuals are not. But I'll tell you, if I'm a TSA agent or anyone else and I see this kind of cash going through, and that you're able to report the amount of cash going through, that it's happening in plain sight. We're seeing corruption in plain sight. Most of the remittances that go back often go to these foreign countries, and there's substantial portions of their economy, whether it's Guatemala and Mexico and other countries. Their own workers are sending that money back. But this is at a level that is just unprecedented. And I really think we need to look into a way to track that and to actually show that we can hold them accountable, and that type of suspicious activity leads to fraud, arrest, and what we're seeing unfold every day in Minnesota, which seems to get worse by the day.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I want to ask about the two most common way illegal aliens, also legal aliens, by the way, legal residents of the United States, but move money out of the country, remittance payment centers, and of course, these cash couriers like the ones that we're working out of the Minneapolis airport. Is there any thought in Congress to requiring that a remittance payment business or a cash courier ascertain and make sure that before they move money, the person that they're moving money from out of the United States is a lawful resident or citizen?
Yeah, I think that should be a requirement. And also they should have some kind of certification that you are a person that we can trust, our intelligence forces have already vetted, that you can be carrying these huge amounts of cash back and forth to other countries. And I don't think those types of laws are in place. And I think that's a really good way to start having accountability and also tracking where this cash leaving the United States is going. And look what it would have led to had we paid attention to this over the last 10 years and what you reported earlier on $700 million. I mean, that's almost $1 billion going, I think it was 700 million going, through an airport in Minneapolis, not JFK. Amazing, right?
Yeah.
More Somali fraud. You want to listen to this. This is by an independent reporter with the name you see up there. But let me read this to you. It says, breaking news, 700 million in cash carried out in luggage through Minneapolis airport by Somali migrants in 2024 and 2025. FBI has officially launched an investigation. The massive cash exodus happened in Minneapolis-Saint Paul International Airport, where TSA agents flagged about 1 million a day in passengers' luggage over the past 2 years. This money was transported by a small group of Somali migrant couriers. The cash was routinely declared to authorities and packed in suitcases, often in bundles of 1 million or more. I didn't know you could do that. Couriers travel in pairs, taking established routes from the US to the Middle East to Somalia and other African countries. Minneapolis alone accounted for about 342 million in flat cash in 2024 and 349 million in 2025. The volume from this single airport was 99 times more than larger airports like LA and New York. Former TSA personnel said that Somalis carrying cash was routine and they were waved through despite the large amount of money. These cash movements date back about a decade, accelerating significantly in recent years. So you're telling me that the Somalis have been carrying luggages full of cash, almost $1 billion in cash through the airport in bags, and that didn't raise any red flags and nobody asked any questions? Like, are you sick of this yet? I can't even pull out $1,000 out of my bank account without the bank kind of like looking at me like, "Ooh, what do you want this for?" But the Somalis can carry almost $1 billion in cash through the airport into Africa and the Middle East, allegedly.
So I've been researching this issue of fraud, and more specifically Somali fraud, because it is so gargantuan for the past 7 years. Many of you are familiar with the video that Nick Shirley and I made. We have a second video that's coming out Monday that is 10 times worse than the original video. It's going to be pretty shocking and it's pretty graphic. So what I have here is a 5-year recap of all of the CCAP money, that's child care assistance payments.
Hold up. Yeah. The pay woman. You feel that? What is happening in Minnesota right now is the closest thing to the Civil War we've seen in 160 years. Governor Tim Walz just put the National Guard on alert, not to protect the state, but to potentially block federal agents from doing their jobs. The facts are blunt. Walz is invoking the spirit of 1863, calling on neighbors to hold the line against the federal government. But here's the real story. This isn't about decency. It's about survival. While the state was bleeding taxpayer money, investigators found that $700 million in cash was carried through the Minneapolis airport in suitcases by Somali couriers. $1 million a day for 2 years, and the state government did nothing. Why? Because stopping the fraud would have cost them an election. Now that the feds are closing in with audits and investigations, Walz is using the National Guard as a political shield. He is effectively signaling to radical groups that the state will protect them from federal law. This is the ultimate act of political selfishness. He is willing to risk civil unrest and a constitutional crisis just to stay out of a jail cell. The supremacy clause is clear. No governor can co-opt the military to obstruct federal law. The debate is over. Do you stand with the Constitution or a rogue governor? Type 1776 in the comments. Join the 1776 crew and hit follow for the truth.
We
We're
now
gonna
have
turn our attention
suitcases
back to
full
the
of
Somali
cash
fraud
going to the
investigation, as
airports
we've discussed
headed to
before.
Somalia.
Authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises: what does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Great to be on with you too. What a crazy time we're seeing here.
Seems like a lot of money to be transported in a suitcase.
Insanity. And I know oversight in the House is looking into these fraud allegations, but I wonder if it's even bigger than we have uncovered thus far. The $700 million in cash going out of the airports there. I have a feeling we are still just scratching the surface.
Yeah, it looks really bad, and obviously very alarming to see that this U.S. cash has been legally going through our airports. And of course, there is a requirement of reporting if you're going to carry more than $10,000. There's a reporting requirement, but I think a really interesting part about this is if, isn't it going to be a little suspicious when you start seeing 10,000, 100,000, millions, and now, more, as John reported earlier, more money that goes through JFK, goes through.
Y'all, I remember years ago, I flew into Germany and they made damn sure I did not have over $10,000. They made sure I did not have over $10,000 before I could even board the plane. Now, these people got away with $700 million. And in order for Somalia to have billions from the US government stolen money, they were probably shipping it out in large, massive amounts. It just got caught now. I'm sure this is not the first time they sent hundreds of millions out all at once. It just got caught now. And it makes me wonder if all this scam reports did not break, would this still be going on now? Of course it would. Of course it would. But yeah, I remember they checked and double checked. You don't have more than this amount. I'm like, no, I don't. But just the thought, they made a big deal out of freaking $10,000. And these people got 700 million up at the airport, packed in bags. And it could have made it all the way over there to Somalia. But I think because of everything going on now, they're probably checking Somalians a lot more than they ever have in the past. And that's more than likely why they got caught this time, because they are going above and beyond, especially in Minnesota, to check these Somalians. I'm just saying, y'all. I'm just saying.
Today, ladies and gentlemen, people fleeing Minneapolis back to Somalia have been caught with millions and millions of dollars in U.S. cash on them and in their suitcases. Now, everyone knows that the maximum cash you're allowed to travel with without claiming it, I believe, is $10,000. And I think you still have to claim that. Well, these people are claiming no money, and over $700 million has been found in suitcases where these people are attempting to take this cash out of the country and back to Somalia with them, perhaps before they're busted for fraud, or perhaps they've already been busted and deported and their relatives are sending it back to Somalia. The whole thing is crazy. Let's take a look at how busy TSA is at the Minneapolis airport this week.
So we're going to turn our attention back to the Somali fraud investigation, as we've discussed before. Authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises. What does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Great to be on with you too. What a crazy time we're seeing here, aren't we?
Absolutely insanity. And I know oversight in the House is looking into these fraud.
Okay. You know, all I got to say, because they're saying that it's now probably way bigger. First they gave 9 million, then they're saying more than likely 18 billion, 9 billion. And now they're saying they really don't know. It can be way bigger than that. And you know what? In all honesty, I believe it is. I believe it is. I think they're lowballing these numbers. I think it is way past $18 billion. And look at how many people failed to do their jobs. You can't tell me this didn't pass through a lot of people. It did. People did not do their jobs in Minnesota. Man, it must be nice. We in our community can have a legitimate business. And right now, if we try to get money or any kind of assistance for our business through the government, they gonna turn us down flat just because of who we are. Not because you don't have, the business or the revenue or anything. Oh, because of who we are. They're gonna just say no. And it just goes to show you, America would rather give money to illegal strangers to this country than to the people that come from the forefathers that built it. Says it all right there. Says it all. But I just wanted to show y'all this because this one blew my mind when I saw it. It absolutely did. So, y'all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for your donations. And I pray the Most High will reward you by giving it all back to you tenfold. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful night. And we'll be back together again to do this all over again on different topics. Shalom, family.